I'm Bob Blaskiewicz, as it says there. I teach critical thinking at Stockton University. A lot of freshmen. I'm in the first year program. And so we kind of teach them how to use evidence, how to read critically, that sort of thing. And the way that I've been doing this for the last forever has been to introduce them to what skeptics would call extraordinary claims. These are claims that if they turn out to be true, mean that we're going to have to fundamentally revise how we think of the world, how we think of other people, and even how we think about ourselves. So something like evolution, extraordinary claim with a lot of good evidence for it, right? 9/11 was an inside job, an extraordinary claim with a different type of evidence. By conspiracy theories, I'm talking about something kind of specific. I use that to, it's an unproven or an unfounded story of a relatively small number of people doing very bad things in secret, right? So in the realm, a lot of times people kind of work like Bigfoot's a conspiracy theory. No, Bigfoot wouldn't be a conspiracy theory. Now, if SEAL Team 6 was training Bigfoot to be a super soldier, that would be a conspiracy theory. So they're complicated subject of study. They're often very similar in structure. They're actually kind of easy to study because of that. You know, they're similar in structure. You have a lot of narrative elements that are shared between these different types of stories. You have a number of conspiracy theories can latch onto the same phenomenon. So, for instance, the Denver International Airport. Conspiracy theorists don't exactly know what it is, but they know that it's bad, right? Like, they look at the art and they say that it's a bunker for the Illuminati rulers. So when the apocalypse comes, or maybe it's the gateway to an underground network of cities. You know, they just know that it's bad, though. I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I said it's just a terrible airport.
Yes. It had problems, right? So add to that you know, often the conspiracy theories themselves are sometimes kind of amateurish at best and in all caps at worst. You can see that keeping up with these conspiracy theories can be somewhat taxing. But what I want to do today is give you a ridiculously quick overview of conspiracy theories and talk about some of the features that make for a good one. We'll also talk about why I think we're stuck with conspiracy theories, and then I'll look at two of them that have been making the rounds recently. Of all the attempts to systematically describe conspiracy theories, the one that I find the most elegant is by Michael Barkun in his book, A Culture of Conspiracy. Apocalyptic Visions in Contemporary America. I can recommend this book without reservation. He has done all the reading so you don't have to. He's read a lot of horrible stuff. And he establishes genealogies of these stories and shows how they develop over time. He has two related groups of ideas that do describe most conspiracy theories. The first is three important maxims that I think you can apply to most conspiracy theories. The first is that all things, nothing happens by accident. There are no accidents in conspiracy theories. Everything is deliberately designed. The second is that all things are connected. And the third is that nothing is as it seems. Barkun categorizes conspiracy theories by the scope of their content and the ambitions of the conspirators. First, we have an event conspiracy. So, for instance, an event conspiracy is kind of usually a one-off type of deal that explains something in the news that may be distressing. It's limited, right? So in this case, they killed Marilyn Monroe. The CIA killed Marilyn Monroe because The pillow talk with JFK was about Roswell, and they didn't want her to talk. So it's very limited, goals of the conspirators. The second type is a systemic conspiracy. This one usually the goals of the bad guys is usually a little bit. Their goals are a little bit broader: the control of a country or perhaps the world. So, for instance, you will see it's the type of conspiracy that you would see behind the New World Order type conspiracy theories. Most of them, depending on who the actors are. And then the third type is kind of the badass big brother of the systemic conspiracy, the super conspiracy. And this is like, these people it's kind of a Talmudic attention to detail, and they're characterized by having many, many layers of conspiracy behind conspiracy behind conspiracy. So even the conspirators themselves may be the puppets of other conspirators. And it's where everything seems to be duplicitous, even the explanations they come up with for these. So, I find this one is basically an anti-Semitic conspiracy. It's because you have the international banking dynasty of the Rothschild family, that's Jewish bankers. But they're probably controlled by the reptilian overlords. So conspiracy theories are nothing new. We've been afraid of the wrong people for a long time, and there are probably very few entirely new and original conspiracy theories. And they all kind of depend on this kind of basic understanding that we have so often, that this world is the expression of some other reality. So, for instance, this is Barkun's third maxim, that nothing is as it seems. Think of the Puritans and the Salem massacre. They saw their world, the orderly progression of society, as being the end result or the product of a harmony of covenants between various levels of society, between the family and the father and the government, the church and God. And all those all had to be intact. And when those were covenants, those relationships were intact, you had an orderly and prosperous society. So when someone's cow choked on a potato, clearly somebody had stepped outside the bounds of society and was conspiring with someone else. The devil. Could it be? Yeah, I wasn't going to go there, but and that was a real accusation, by the way. The cow choked on a potato. Man, the post hoc fallacy, I tell you. So I kind of think of this as, you see it in like Greek myths too, where like a god deflects the arrow that's flying at their favored hero, and it just kind of nudges it out of the way so it's not a kill, right? In this case, you see them invoked in the case of natural disasters. That's Hurricane Irene right there, the big one, the explanation would be that the HAARP array, which is an experimental atmospheric research center in Alaska, is actually they're beaming energy up to the sky and causing things like earthquakes and hurricanes, or sending messages to your fillings, or whatever it is, right? That this hurricane is the expression of someone's will somehow. And in the case of the conspiracy theorists, it's usually a person or some sort of living entity rather than a divine. I think you once described them as Bond villains living in their remote lairs, right? That the world is really controlled by these people. Conspiracy theories often betray the conspiracy theorists' inability to understand or recognize the relative value of different bits of evidence. My favorite example of this is one you may have come across before. A guy's name is Ralph Rene. So the conspiracy theory that we didn't really land on the moon, that everything was filmed on a soundstage. And I really like this example because he gets evidence kind of wrong. And one of his big pieces of evidence is what's called the sea rock. Okay? And you can see, as clear as day, that on this photo from the moon, there is a sea on this rock. I know. Well, what could it be? And he kind of has a story that kind of backs up what he wants to believe, that, well, clearly prop masters on sets mark all of the foam rocks or whatever with letters, and so you know where they go. And it's this elaborate story. And he just happened to blow, they're so omnipotent and also so incompetent that they are able to fake this, but then just let this one little thing slip. Now, Blooper reel. I know, totally, right? The outtakes are hilarious. But yeah, so when you look at any other print from the same negative, and this is not a great image of it, but you don't see the sea there anymore. So what it was a mote of dust. And you have to consider that this guy is willing to, when you take all of the journalistic and governmental and scientific evidence, the testimonies of everybody who worked on one of the most scrutinized public stories of the 20th century, that weight of evidence for Rene is crushed by a mote of dust, right? This is someone who doesn't understand the relative value of evidence. And so it's what I tell my students, is that everything is evidence of something. The critical thinker's job is to find out what it's evidence of, right? So yeah. One of the most important things for a successful conspiracy theory is that it is unfalsifiable, a concept that those of us who are interested in extraordinary claims are familiar with. One way that a conspiracy theory can ensure its unfalsifiability is by explicitly positing that a crucial part of the conspiracy takes place in, say, a remote area, where you can't, an interested skeptic couldn't go and examine it directly. For example, the worst kept secret in America, Area 51, seen here on Google Earth. Or is it? Dum dum dum. The very fact that it's in a remote area, which makes it a perfect place to test experimental airplanes, is what makes it so attractive to the conspiracy theorist, right? But even more implausible, and therefore placed in an even more remote part of the world, is the notion that the survivors of the Third Reich fled to Antarctica using their advanced aeronautic technology, or better yet, to a Nazi moon base, or even Aryan colonies among the stars. And as you move farther out from your run-of-the-mill mom-and-pop FEMA death camp, more frequently you're entering the realm of the New Age conspiracy and the eclectic conspiracy theory. And so we're at the very top of Mount Unreasonable is the unfalsifiable theory by David Icke that the world is controlled by shape-shifting, mind-controlling lizard families. Huh? They're called Zygons, yeah. So, you can't falsify that. My favorite thing is, when his, after he came out with the reptilian lizard theory, you wonder, how is he going to write the next book? Where do you go from that? And his answer was, well, he's like, hold my beer. The moon is a spaceship, and it's hollow, and that's where they broadcast the hallucinations from. And you're just like, wow, you win. Well played. Conspiracy theorists love manifestos. Whether you have something like the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, the Project for the New American Century, the I don't know, Manifesto of Atheists or whatever. They like to have some sort of document that they can refer to that spells out what the evil plan. The Georgia Guidestones, that's another one, where the plan is spelled out for them. And the only thing perhaps better than a good manifesto is a good deconversion narrative that gives them everything that they want, right? Like, not only does it confirm that the conspiracy is real and that somebody's been on the inside, but it also shows that it's not useless to fight against it. You can escape, right? And so you might, if you think of the one from the 19th century that was extremely popular, one of the most, I mean, it's probably not quite as popular as Uncle Tom's Cabin, but it was the story of Maria Monk, a woman who was captured or kind of basically kidnapped by a convent and forced to do all sorts of awful nun things. And there was a lot of abuse, and it was really lurid. And it's actually just basically a Gothic novel. It has all the elements. But she escaped, and she wrote her expose. Or you have someone like Kathy O'Brien, who said that she was a CIA sex slave, but she escaped somehow. So they love the first-person anecdote. The last element that I'll talk about, that it's often useful to cast your enemy as a transnational group with uncertain loyalties. The Catholics, the Mafia, the Masons, the Jews, international communism, the Illuminati, reptilians, the EU, the League of Nations, the Trilateral Commission, the Bilderbergers, the IMF, drug cartels, international banks and businesses, fraternal organizations, the United Nations. All of these are major players for the leadership of the New World Order, for the people who are really in charge. But their loyalties are perhaps not to the state or not to the people, right? And the New World Order conspiracy theory is perhaps the most pervasive systemic conspiracy theory. No two theorists exactly agree on how it works. The New World Order conspiracy theories swap narrative elements like strains of the flu, swap genetic material, creating endless forms, most irritating. Tough room. Okay, so like genes, certain theories travel down well through the iterations together. And you see several similar elements appearing in different versions of the story. A really good attempt to describe what's common among all versions of the Protocols of the Elders of Zion was given by Chip Berlet, who wrote a white paper, Toxic to Democracy. And it describes the common claims between all the different various versions of this notorious forgery. And yeah, here you go. I'm sorry to do this to you. Wow. Okay. Wow. Jews are behind a plan for global conquest. Jews work through Masonic lodges. They use liberalism to weaken church and state. They control the press, work through radicals and revolutionaries. Jews manipulate the economy, especially through banking monopolies and the power of gold. They issue paper currency not tied to the gold standard. They promote financial speculation and credit to enslave you, debt slavery. They replace traditional educational curricula to discourage independent thinking. They encourage immorality among Christian youth. They use intellectuals to confuse people. I like that one. Fucking experts. Jews control puppet governments through secret alliances and blackmailing public officials. They weaken laws through liberal interpretation or activist judges. And Jews will suspend civil liberties during an emergency and then make the measures permanent. But the thing is, you can swap out the Jews for atheists or Catholics or anyone. It'd be a recognizable conspiracy theory. These are the you can take them all at once, or you can just take bits of them, kind of like a buffet of bullshit, and pick and choose. So the notion of the New World Order has been appropriated by both religious and secular conspiracists, including and some New Agers as well. The secular strain of the New World Order conspiracy theory draws on a long history of rotten historical practice. Often this type of secular pseudo-history approaches the entire project of history as a search for cui bono, or who benefits from it. So when the Jews benefited from the de-ghettoization in Europe after Napoleon Bonaparte stomped all over Europe, well, clearly the Jews were responsible for the revolution that led to Napoleon, obviously, because they benefit, right? But you know, I think it was Richard Hofstadter said in his essay on paranoid style in American politics that, you know, one of the things you get out of studying history is a sense of how history doesn't work, and it's more random than that. So in its modern incarnation, the New World Order conspiracy, you can see it in the radical right, and it manifests itself clearly in anti-government, xenophobic, patriot movements, which did see a lot of growth after Obama was elected. You see it in the anti-globalist protests of the left as well, so nobody is immune. And it's actually, in the last couple of years, a number of things have come out where people are re-examining conspiracy, that it's a universal phenomenon. Both sides of the political spectrum in this country use it for different means, or for different ends. Let me see. So in the various forms of this conspiracy theory, the American government is imagined to be either a puppet of a foreign power or just rife with internationalists. In many versions, the federal government is preparing to round up the real patriots and put them in concentration camps. This one was popular when I first gave this talk. And the story that they were telling is that they were going to actually take the relocation camps from World War II, the Nisei were put into, and just rehabilitate them. But those were like clapboard, they're gone. But I love that they're rehabilitating the places as well as you know, literally refurbishing the internment camps for new use. It's almost a metaphor, you know. So at any rate, the secular New World Order conspiracy narrative encourages you to prepare for the arrival of martial law and possibly blue-helmeted peacekeepers goose-stepping down Pennsylvania Avenue. So how do we defeat conspiracy theories? You don't. I think it's impossible to prevent them, given the number of sources that are available to the determined conspiracist. I have a short list of places where conspiracy theories come from. Oh, I was going to humor, not me, no. So the first source is the fact that there are actual real secrets in the world. Security services keep secrets to preserve strategic advantages. These will always be with us. The proceedings of I don't know, the board of directors of private companies are not accessible to the people. There are real secrets in the world. And every time that you have every instance of secrecy is an opportunity for the conspiracy theorists to fill it in with whatever they want. In the same way that secrets guarantee that conspiracy theories will endure, our history of cruelty to one another means that there will always be models of oppression that conspiracy theorists will resurrect and repurpose. People feel that they're victims or even potential victims of mind control will look to MKUltra, or who think that we're being experimented on, will look back to Tuskegee experiments, that sort of thing. So there are always, and positive upcoming genocides have any number of precedents, right? Another apparently endlessly renewable fuel source for conspiratorial narratives is our endless capacity for tribal prejudices, which gives rise to racism, classism, casteism, religious discrimination, homophobia, xenophobia, and a general distrust of the other. We have an endless parade of scapegoats who we hold responsible for our own misfortunes. Another reason why they'll never be purged from the public arena is that conspiracy theories are politically useful. They're often concise. They at least let you name a baddie. Sometimes they can, like the super conspiracies, they can be really involved, but that's the product of lots of study. The really simple ones are transmitted very quickly. They have very few elements, and they're familiar, and we habitually fill in the blanks. But they're politically useful. They trigger strong emotions, including emotions like zealotry, fear, and animus, strong political motivators. It's hard to motivate people when things are generally okay. When things are good, it's hard to get people motivated. But if you're beset by evil, genocidal, fascist, socialist, communist monsters, right? Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. And and that he's a Sikh. I mean, it just seems so. I don't know. Yeah. Oh gosh, I never noticed the fingernails, but yeah. So it's easy to get people to respond to fear. I would have said recently that conspiracy theories are a vehicle primarily for the party that's out of power. I'm not sure that that's so true anymore, but certainly the left had its conspiracy theories while Bush was in the White House. 9/11 conspiracy theories that Bush was somehow responsible or knew that it was going to happen or let it happen. That was popular. I kind of believed it. I think a lot of people on the left believed it. But after Obama came into the White House, that kind of opportunistic conspiracy theory kind of dried up, and the people who were left were the people who weren't going to believe in reality anyway. So yeah, and then once Obama was elected, it kind of went the other way. That conspiracy theories were used to discredit the president at that time. Now liberals in the age of Trump, I think, are especially vulnerable to embracing things that they would like to be true that are perhaps not true. This is Louise Mensch, who, as far as I can tell, is kind of like a psychic, throwing out all possible hits of things that could. This one was especially bad because that's kind of not how it works. So I think the contemporary moment. I think right now that there are conspiracy theories can be more than just ideological sustenance for the disempowered. I think that it can also be used to keep people in power. And so religion will continue to fuel conspiracies as long as the devil is thought to be maneuvering the chess pieces around for the final battle between good and evil. And that's another thing about conspiracy theories. It's like you have an absolute good and absolute bad, and never will the two, there's no compromise, and you're going to have this apocalyptic confrontation somehow. The frightening facility with which secular Illuminati-flavored New World Order conspiracy theories have been appropriated by the far right-wing religionists is of special concern. The features of the conspiracy theory that make it so sticky and make it so memorable in kind of the way that memes were supposed to be, in the way that Dawkins used it, that make them memorable and likely to be repeated, are often the same ones that evangelical religions use to spread themselves, at the heart of which is a belief that the truth will set you free and that you must proclaim that truth to as many people as possible. It seems to me to be a feature of both types of thought. The last reason we won't escape, I have two last reasons here. Yeah, somebody incompetent was editing this. Okay, so another reason that we won't escape conspiracy theory is because we all possess human brains. We are creatures that are apt to take unrelated facts and try to put them in relationship to one another and then fill in the blank with stories. You can look at Linda Moulton Howe. Anyone know who she is? She kind of came up with the cattle mutilation story. And so you have little bits of evidence. It's like there are no footprints around, and you have a cow that is missing its butthole, and you have all these different, and they so these must all be related somehow. And so because there are no footprints around, well, clearly whoever took the cow's rectum came from the sky, and why would you travel across the universe in order to steal a cow's butthole? You must really need that butthole, right? So this alien race must be sick or dying and really need the genetic material. You know, like, and so that's how these stories kind of grow. We kind of fill in the blanks between these unrelated things. You know, yeah, that's a fun one. I love showing her documentary, Strange Harvest, to my students. I warned them there will be horses without faces. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, you might not want to look that one up. That's me next to her. Yeah, I met her I fixed her laptop once. She showed her presentation. I regretted it. So yeah, the last reason why we'll never be rid of conspiracy theories is the simple fact that conspiracy theorists have this uncanny knack for taking lack of evidence as being evidence of an ever more powerful conspiracy. Right? It goes deeper than they possibly could have imagined, right? So they can always, look to the lack of evidence as positive evidence. This is just thinking gone wrong, as far as I can tell. Now, with these comments in mind, I'd like to introduce two recent conspiracy theories that you may have seen. This will be Pizzagate. Yeah. And then the Seth Rich conspiracy theory. The Pizzagate is based on the John Podesta's leaked or stolen, I think is fair, stolen selectively released emails. And they claim that a popular DC pizzeria, Comet Ping Pong, is the source of, or it hosts a pedophile ring, an underground pedophile ring. And this really, it's like nothing is really new. This sounds a lot like the Satanic Panic of the 1980s, though it was daycare centers before. Now it's pizza parlors for some reason. The most serious consideration of the story in the mainstream media came from a guy in Atlanta by the name of Ben Swann, who we see here. It's a CBS News affiliate in Atlanta. In February 2011, that same station aired a story about chemtrails. Yeah, and it went berserk on the internet. And when I heard that, they said they got thousands of emails from people who are just so thankful that they were finally talking about clouds. So I wanted to see those emails because one of the things I study is conspiracy theories. So I wanted to go see them, and I met the reporter, and he was looking for other stories that he could tell because that one had been so popular, not because it was news. So yeah, so I wasn't entirely surprised that the same station was paying attention to this, but the tone of Swann's was much less skeptical from Chirico's. So this past January, Ben Swann aired a reality check segment titled "Is Pizzagate Fake News?" And he starts off describing the media reportage of the story as dismissive, and that it had widely been labeled as fake news. And then he kind of asks as an aside, so what does the term fake news even mean? He fully answers it by the end of this segment. So it's presented almost as a continuous shot of him in front of a PowerPoint presentation, which kind of reminds me of Glenn Beck and his chalkboards, right? Theorizing. So what we have instead of a news report with interviews and reporting from the field is a monologue listing decontextualized evidence. Evidence needs to be in context. I mean, things don't mean anything unless there's context. And he makes connections, whether or not they're real connections. It's kind of like putting two unrelated things in the same box and saying, aha, they're related. So he starts off with a little CYA that none of the emails that were leaked mentioned child sex trafficking or pedophilia. And most investigative reporters would take that to mean they're not about sex trafficking or pedophilia, but not Ben Swann. There are dozens of what seem to be strangely worded emails dealing with pizza. And did it come up? No. Pizza and handkerchiefs. Okay, so I know So he says, quote, self-described online investigators say that those words in the emails about pizza and the talk of handkerchiefs is code language used by pedophiles. And so there's a lot to unpack here, so please bear with me. If you search WikiLeaks, the WikiLeaks Podesta archive for the word handkerchief, you'll see it's more accurate to say that there are 9 mentions in 5 email threads of the term handkerchief in the 50,000 Podesta emails. In the 4 email thread, "Did you leave a handkerchief?" we see that Podesta appears to have left a handkerchief behind during a tour of some real estate with a member of the staff of the Sandler Foundation. I don't know who they are. The note from the agent mentions that the object was left on the kitchen island at this particular property. And then the Sandler Foundation rep tells Podesta, quote, the realtor found a handkerchief. I think it has a map that seems pizza related. Is it yours? They can send it to you. They can send it if you want. I know you're busy, so feel free not to respond if it's not yours or you don't want it. Podesta replies and says it's his, but it's not important. Now, this is the only time that the terms handkerchief and pizza come up together, right? Podesta, who's supposed to be the link between Hillary Clinton and pizza scarfing pedophiles, never uses the terms together in his emails. Rather, they come from the Sandler Foundation rep. What's the Sandler Foundation hiding? And while the description is vague, it's not suspicious in any way. And for sure, Podesta doesn't freak out when he finds that his super secret handkerchief with a treasure map leading to pedophile pizzerias has been discovered. This is my favorite slide I've ever made. So yeah. Anyway, we find many more mentions of pizza when we go through the archive, and most of the times it seems to be related to things like dinner and feeding volunteers working on campaigns. Yeah, I know. Certainly Ben Swan, as an investigative reporter, could share with us at least one suspicious email, but he never does, of course. Instead he mystery mongers, and we're left only with, quote, dozens of what seem to be strangely worded emails dealing with pizza and handkerchiefs. Further, to say something that is strangely worded is very subjective. He invokes strangeness without any evidence of strangeness. And maybe it would be more convincing if it turns out, you can check this, if handkerchiefs and pizza really are part of a pedophile-coded language. Well, this is surprisingly tough to check, honestly. I was assured by a person who I believe, a very intelligent person, my first student ever to have a peer-reviewed publication, who is genuinely brilliant, and yet Pizzagate, right? He said that he pointed me to a reliable source, the most complete and accurate summary of the Pizzagate theory at vote.com. But according to that summary of the evidence, the relevant term is not pizza, but cheese pizza. Child pornography is cheese pizza. Their citation is the Urban Dictionary. The phrase cheese pizza doesn't appear in the Podesta emails at all. You don't see anything in Google Books, so the history of the English language, we don't see it. It doesn't turn up meaningful results. But let's say that these really are code words, and one that is based on the initial letters of the words child and pornography. Swan never explains why the use of a code word would lead us to think that an actual pizzeria was involved. Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, so there's no reason even to follow up and consider Comet Ping Pong Pizzeria as the scene of a child sex crime based on secret pedo alliteration. Swan next says that the mainstream media says Comet Ping Pong Pizzeria has no relation to anyone mentioned in the email, suggesting that the media is ignoring the fact that the owner of the restaurant is a friend of Podesta's. And I guess you can't blame it on an investigative reporter if after a month of investigation, he never came across an obscure little online zine called the New York Times, which talked about these friendships explicitly on November 22nd of last year. So what's the upshot here? According to Swan, as he closes the story, there has not been one single public investigation of any of this, not from local police, not from the FBI, no one. And that has to be the big question, not for Podesta or for pizza parlor owners, but for law enforcement. Based on what may or may not be here, the big question is, why hasn't any investigation taken place? Then, despite having the title of investigative reporter, he doesn't immediately ask the police authorities why they aren't investigating. So I did. I sent an email to the Metropolitan Police Department, and an officer got back to me literally within minutes, saying the Metropolitan Police Department takes matters such as this very seriously. After investigating those claims, we have determined those allegations to be false. All of the questions in Swan's conspiracy theory have answers. It's the job of a responsible reporter to look for and listen to those answers, not just keep asking questions. Otherwise, you're left with, as I said, fake news. Our next conspiracy theory is one that is still playing out. I think it's kind of petering out after a week or so, but we'll see. These things are unsinkable rubber ducks. And it's the Seth Rich conspiracy theory. When news broke that Trump had given intelligence to the Russians and that he'd asked the recently redundant FBI chief and famed memo writer, James Comey, to call off the investigation into problematic foreign agent and national security advisor, Michael Flynn, I expected and saw wall-to-wall coverage in the media about this scandal, with the notable exception of some areas of conservative media, including Fox News. Instead, a number of outlets had been focusing on the early morning murder of a DNC staffer, Seth Rich, last July. It seems like a random killing. It seems like it was and most of the accounts that I've seen say that it's probably a robbery gone wrong in an area where there had been an uptick in muggings. Rich's name was again popping up in my conspiracy theory alerts and feeds. 10 minutes? Cool. So it was clear he was back on the radar. Nonetheless, I was shocked when I turned into a PBS audio feed of a off-camera press gaggle last week, where I heard for what all the world sounded like the press secretary of the White House talking about a DNC staffer during the week that other things were dominating the headlines. Like, can you imagine being in the press room at the White House and asking about this last week? That's so self-debasing. So I missed the beginning of exchange. I looked it up, looked up the transcript. Spicer called on a reporter named Ronica, and it turns out this is Ronica Cleary. Does anyone know that one? We're close enough, I thought maybe. From a local Fox affiliate, WTTG Fox 5. I don't usually conflate Fox News and their affiliates, the national news and local news. I didn't realize that might be different in DC. It just never occurred to me. The scope and content are usually so different. Because Rich lived in the DC area and was killed there, it makes sense that the death was covered by the local affiliate. And when you look through the past coverage, you see that, in fact, that's her, that they have covered it pretty extensively. That's from their website, and those are the previous stories. But you'll see things like WikiLeaks mentioned, and you see Russians mentioned in there somewhere. We'll get back to that. The resurrection of the Rich story occurred on that Monday, and it came from a private investigator named Rod Wheeler. Wheeler, who's an occasional Fox News guest and analyst, was described in the story on the Fox 5 webpage as the family's private investigator. Family's private investigator. There is evidence Seth Rich had contact with WikiLeaks prior to death. Does this sound like the family is signing off on that? No. You don't think it sounds like, okay. When I read it, I thought family's private investigator. I thought like Fox is saying, yeah, the family's investigator's saying this. Surely he must speak for the family, you know? That's how I read it. And as we turn out, they don't. He was shot a few weeks before the DNC email leak from WikiLeaks. Julian Assange, who's I think you can say has been partisan in this matter, hinted to Megyn Kelly in August of last year that Rich may have been a source of the DNC emails. He never said it outright. WikiLeaks also offered a $20,000 reward for information leading to conviction for the murder of DNC staffer Seth Rich. Though there's no evidence that the murder was in any way related to his job, nor that he was the source of the information sent to WikiLeaks. Are we supposed to imagine that now WikiLeaks is naming its sources? I don't think so. But when the explanation of event precedes the event, there's a very good chance that you're looking at a conspiracy theory. In this case, the story of the shooting is another chapter in what has been called the Clinton death list. Anybody who has ever died, starting with Vince Foster, anybody who's ever died, I gotcha, if they've ever died having ever met the Clintons did it for some reason. So anyway, Wheeler said, this investigator said that I have a source inside the police department that has looked me straight in the eye and said, Rod, we were told to stand down on this case and I can't share any information with you. That's highly unusual for a murder investigation, especially from a police department. Again, I don't think it comes from the chief's office, but I do believe there's a correlation between the mayor's office and the DNC, and that is the information that will come out later on. If a hypothetical person looks you in the eye, it must be true. Wheeler claims that Rich's laptop and with it the email evidence linking Rich to WikiLeaks is currently missing, and that both the FBI and DC police claim that the other agency has the laptop, and that's presumably where the evidence of sending thousands and thousands of emails to WikiLeaks would be. But NBC looked into the case, and they found, they talked to somebody with knowledge of the investigation, and they said that, quote, it never contained emails related to WikiLeaks, and the FBI never had it. So, yeah. I again contacted the DC Metropolitan Police, and they replied again very quickly because, and this is totally a form letter because it's the same letter that appears on Snopes, that the assertions put forward by Mr. Wheeler are unfounded. The Metropolitan Police Department's homicide branch is actively investigating Mr. Rich's murder, and we continue to work with the family to bring closure to this case as we do in all homicide investigations. It turns out that the investigation by Wheeler, who did, I swear to God, once claimed on the O'Reilly Factor that gangs of lesbians were raping young girls and wreaking havoc across the country with their pink Glocks. What respectable lesbian would have a pink Glock? It turns out he's not being paid by the family. He's being paid by a third party, a financial advisor in Dallas by the name of Ed Butowski. Butowski is also an occasional Fox News commentator, according to NBC, and he has also written for Breitbart, the right-wing propaganda outfit whose former chief executive sits at the right hand of the president. Butowski telegraphed the release of this story before the bombshells started coming out at the White House, but this tweet has since disappeared. He denied that he was even involved in the investigation until Rich's family went public. It took about half a week for Fox to take this down. But the controversy is ongoing. The family has sent cease and desist letters to those perpetuating the myth and have written a plea for basic human decency in the Washington Post. Sean Hannity has been pressing the story very hard, and he's gotten a lot of well-earned flack for his apparent fixation on this feeble non-story. It seems clear that people would rather talk about anything rather than the unfolding extinction event at the White House. Thank you very much.